OSHA citation 1473822, issued December 2024. Inspection at a shipyard in the Gulf Coast region. 2 employees entered a void on a partially completed hull. Atmospheric reading was taken at the start of shift. The work in the void had not started yet at that point. By the time entry occurred, the reading was 4 hours old. The standby attendant was, quote, in the immediate area, but had been pulled off to help unload material from a delivery truck. The first entrant lost consciousness at approximately 14 minutes into the entry. The second entrant attempted rescue without summoning the standby team. Both entrants were recovered. Only one survived. The permit was filled out correctly. Welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, Regional Safety Manager at Peckham Industries, Chief Systems Architect at Kinetiq Analytics. This is the show where we talk about the space between what corporate safety says is supposed to happen and what actually happens at the workplace. Today I'm joined by somebody I've been trying to get on a microphone for about a year. Ray Connelly is the Director of Environmental Health and Safety at Atlantic Maritime Group. He's been in the shipyard side of this work for 36 years, 18 of those at AMG. Before that, before he was anybody's director, Ray was the EHS director who hired me at the yard when I was 23 years old and didn't know a confined space permit from a hot work permit. He walked me through my first fatality investigation when I had no business being in the room. 12 years later, we're still talking. Ray, welcome to the show, brother.
12 years and you still call me brother. Appreciate you having me, Jeffrey. Let's see if we can't bother some executives.
That's the whole format right there.
That's the format.
So I want to start with the citation I just read. Because when I read that one this morning, I had 2 reactions. The first was, how does this still happen in 2026? The second was, I bet the permit was filled out correctly.
Both reactions are right, and neither of them helps the entrant or the attendant.
For folks listening who aren't in this work every day, give them the 30-second version. What is a confined space entry permit? Why does it exist?
Okay, so a confined space is, in the OSHA general definition, it's a space that's big enough for somebody to get into and do work, has limited means of entry or exit, and isn't designed for continuous occupancy. Tanks, voids, silos, pits, sewers. In the shipyard, it's a hull void, a tank, a cofferdam, sometimes a piping run. The permit's the document that says before anybody goes in, somebody has tested the atmosphere, somebody has identified the hazards, somebody has set up a rescue plan, and somebody has signed for all of it.
And on the mining and aggregate side I work, it's 30 CFR, part 56.16002. Material storage bins, silos, surge piles. Different physical environments, same conceptual structure. Permit, atmospheric test, attendant, rescue plan.
Yeah, the text differs. The shape is the same.
Now, and this is where it gets interesting. Your maritime side has an extra layer on top, doesn't it? 29 CFR 1915 is its own world.
Yeah, 1915 is... I tell new safety techs when they come in, I say, look, OSHA General Industry is a textbook. 1915 is a textbook written by people who'd actually been in a tank that was on fire. There's specificity in 1915 that you don't see in 1910. Tank cleaning standards, hot work standards, the whole subpart on accident prevention signs and tags. It reads different because the stakes read different.
And then on top of 1915, you've got NAVC standard items for anybody working a Navy hull.
Yep, NAVC standard item 009-07, the gas-free engineering one. That's the document that adds another whole layer of testing and certification on top of what OSHA already requires. So at our yard, a single confined space entry on a destroyer hull is, let me count, OSHA 1915.12, the NAVC standard item, our corporate procedure, the work package specific JHA, and the daily permit. 5 documents. Per entry.
Per entry.
Per entry.
How many entries on a typical hull during outfitting?
On a busy day, 40, 50.
Okay, so let me play the corporate side honestly for a minute, because every one of those 5 documents exists for a reason. Walk me through how that permit at your yard got to 43 steps.
Yeah, so I'll tell you something I don't say a lot on the record. The reason that permit at our yard has 43 steps is because every revision was a name.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one. The continuous monitoring requirement was added after we lost an entrant in 2008. The redundant atmospheric test was after another incident in 11. Guy survived but ended up on a ventilator for 2 weeks. The standby rescue call out was 14 and 21, 2 names. The pre-entry briefing requirement, that one came from a near miss, not a fatality, which honestly is the only reason it didn't add 3 steps instead of 1.
So when somebody from corporate audit comes in and says we should add a 44th step,
My answer is always, I don't say it this way out loud, but my answer is always, which name is that one for?
right.
Because if you can't tell me whose name the step is for, I don't know what we're solving.
I have a permit with a similar lineage. The grit chamber at a quarry in central New York, 1997. The kid was 19. The permit we use at the operation now has 32 steps, and every one of them is a name. So I'm not going to sit here and say the corporate procedure is overgrown bureaucracy. It's not. It's scar tissue. The procedure is what we have instead of the people we lost.
Yeah.
And the people who write those procedures aren't the enemy. They're trying to make sure the next investigation has fewer findings.
They are. And look, I've sat in those rooms. I've been the one drafting the revision. After an incident, you've got a CEO who wants to know what we're going to do different. You've got insurance asking the same question. You've got the family of the worker asking the same question. And the answer that satisfies all 3 of those audiences and is defensible in a deposition is we added a step.
Yeah.
We added a step. That's the answer every time. It's the answer because it's the answer that survives audit. The longer the permit, the more defensible the program looks on paper.
Right, and here's where it breaks. Because the permit is graded by an auditor sitting in a conference room with a document in front of them. The work is graded by the laws of physics, and the 2 grading rubrics don't agree.
No, they don't.
I'll give you the version I see. Last summer, I went out to one of our crushed stone operations. Walked through a permitted confined space entry. They had the permit. They had it filled out correctly. They had it filled out at 6:15 that morning.
Before they did the work.
Before they walked over to the chamber. The atmospheric reading was from 40 minutes earlier. The crew that signed as attendants were also the crew doing the work, meaning the same 3 guys rotated through being the attendant for each other's entries. The rescue plan referenced a tripod and harness setup that wasn't physically at that operation anymore. It got moved to a different site 6 months prior, and the permit template never got updated.
Sounds about right.
And the foreman wasn't lying. He wasn't trying to game it. He was just solving the problem in front of him with the tools he had. The permit assumes an isolated entry with dedicated attendants. He had 3 guys and 4 chambers to clean before lunch.
Now imagine that on a destroyer hull during outfitting. You've got 6 concurrent confined space entries happening on the same shift. Different voids, different work, different permits. The permits assume each entry is an isolated event. They aren't. The same fitter is moving between 3 of them. The same attendant is signing for 2. The continuous monitoring requirement is 1 guy with a meter trying to be in 3 places at once.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, on paper, every permit is compliant. Every signature is on the right line. Every atmospheric reading is recorded. And in practice, nobody is actually being continuously monitored, because continuous monitoring of 3 separate entries with 1 attendant is, well, it's not continuous monitoring. It's not even, I don't know what it is. It's documentation.
It's theater.
Yeah, it's theater for an audience of one, and that audience is the auditor. You know, if the permit just knew which entrant was actually inside which void, which meter was actually reading on which entry, and whose name was actually on the attendant line, in real time, this whole thing would solve itself.
I'm sure somebody is working on that.
Sure they are, Jeffrey. Sure they are.
Okay, so let me try to articulate the actual disconnect. Because it's not corporate is stupid, and it's not frontline is lazy. It's more interesting than that.
It is more interesting than that. Tell me what you think it is.
The corporate side is optimizing for defensibility in a post-incident investigation. They're asking, if something goes wrong, can we show we did everything we were supposed to do? The front line is optimizing for getting the work done in the time and with the people they have. They're asking, how do I get this chamber clean before lunch with 3 guys? Those aren't the same question. They look like they should be the same question. They're not.
They're not. And here's the part that I think most people miss. They shouldn't be the same question. The corporate side is supposed to be thinking about defensibility. That's the job. Somebody has to be in the conference room thinking about what survives a deposition. If everybody at the company was thinking about how to get the chamber cleaned by lunch, we wouldn't have a safety program. We'd just have a production program with a really impressive incident rate.
Right.
But the gap exists because the corporate side designs the procedure assuming the frontline side has the resources to execute it, and the frontline side doesn't. Not because they're under-resourced, although sometimes they are, but because the procedure was designed in an environment where one entry, one attendant, one dedicated rescue team was the unit of analysis. And the actual unit of work on the floor is 5 concurrent entries on a hull, 3 guys rotating through every roll, a meter that's also being used 3 voids over.
So the procedure isn't wrong. It's just designed for a unit of work that doesn't exist in the field.
That's it. The procedure isn't wrong. It's designed for a unit of work that doesn't exist in the field. And look, we're not going to fix this by making the procedure longer. We've tried that. Adding a 44th step doesn't bring the procedure closer to reality. It pushes it further away.
And we're not going to fix it by trusting the crew either. They're already trustworthy. Hand on heart, the people I work with want to do this right. The system around them doesn't support doing it right.
It doesn't.
There's got to be a way to get the audit pack and the actual work to be the same document.
Right. Some kind of, I don't know, nexus between the two. What? I'm just spitballing.
Okay, moving on. Ray, I'll tell you where I had to learn this myself. After I left the yard and moved into the highway work, this is maybe 4 years in, I had a near miss come across my desk. Paving crew on a county road in upstate Massachusetts. They had the dump truck bed raised to discharge into the paver hopper. Bed went up under an overhead distribution line. Didn't quite touch it. The driver felt the static before the operator saw what was about to happen. Everybody walked away.
How close?
Closer than I want to say on the podcast. So I went back to my office and I wrote a new SOP. The crew was supposed to do an overhead line mark out before any work in a corridor with overhead utilities. Spray paint marks on the shoulder opposite each line crossing, so when the foreman walked the work zone, he'd see exactly where he could and couldn't raise a bed. Took maybe 10 minutes per setup. Required spray paint, a tape measure, and a quick walk of the corridor. I rolled it out at the morning huddle. Walked it through with the crew. Did the same speech I'd done 100 times by then. This is what we saw. This is why we're doing it. Here's what we need from you. 3 of the foremen nodded. 2 asked good questions. We agreed. 3 weeks later, I went out to a site. I watched them set up. No mark out. And here's the thing, Ray. The foreman didn't push back. He didn't tell me the SOP was wrong. He didn't tell me it was impractical. He just kind of looked at me. And then he said, "Yeah, Jeffrey, I meant to. I had the paint. It's been a week."
Oh.
I asked him what was getting in the way, and he started listing. The traffic control plan he had to file with the municipality, the morning crew safety briefing, the equipment inspection on every piece coming out of the yard, the customer call from the day before that hadn't gotten resolved, the material delivery that was supposed to be on site at 6 and showed up at 9, the daily report he was already an hour behind on, the flagger captain who'd called in sick, and the scramble to find a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And the markout it was on his list. It just wasn't ahead of any of those other things.
No.
And every day it didn't happen, it got a little easier to not do the next day. It didn't get refused. It got quietly demoted.
Yeah.
So I asked him, what would have to be true for the markout to actually happen? And he didn't have an answer right away, because what he was about to tell me was that nothing on his existing list could come off. The traffic plan has to get filed, the briefing has to get done, the inspection has to happen, the customer has to be called back, the municipality won't accept the work without the daily report. None of those things have slack. So a new 10-minute procedure isn't going to find 10 minutes of slack. It's just going to sit at the bottom of the list and rot.
That's the part nobody writes about. That's the actual disconnect.
It took me a couple weeks to think it through. The fix wasn't a better SOP. The fix wasn't training. The fix was I had to find a version of the markout that survived everything else competing for that foreman's attention. The original procedure took 10 minutes of focused work before the crew started. The version I rewrote took 30 seconds and didn't require any equipment.
What was it?
Every time the truck moved more than 100 feet, the operator and the spotter walked together to the new position. They were already doing that. That coordination already existed. I added one line of script to it. The spotter had to look up, identify any overhead obstructions in the next segment of work, and verbally call them out to the operator before the next bed raise. 30 seconds, no paint, no tape measure, no new equipment.
And they actually did it.
They did, because I wasn't asking them to add a new thing to the list. I was adding 30 seconds to a thing that was already happening. But the lesson wasn't I wrote a bad SOP. The lesson was I'd written the original procedure assuming the foreman had slack to absorb a 10-minute procedure. Foremen don't have slack. They have 10 things competing for 30 minutes of focused attention every morning before the crew rolls. The SOP wasn't ignored because it was wrong. It wasn't ignored because the foreman didn't care. It was ignored because it didn't fit through the bottleneck.
That's the gap. Right there.
That's the gap. Every time. Office writes a procedure assuming the person on the receiving end has bandwidth. The person on the receiving end has the same 12 hours they had yesterday and a longer list than they had yesterday. We've spent 30 years trying to close the gap with longer documents. Might be time to try something else.
Couldn't have said it better, Jeffrey. That's our show. If you've got a gap you want us to dig into, a corporate procedure that stopped fitting through the bottleneck on your floor, an incident pattern you can't articulate to your CEO, an audit finding that doesn't match what your crews actually do, email us at solutions@kinetiq-analytics.com. We read everything that comes in. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Ray.
Anytime, brother.